It's a big weekend coming up at Fairgrounds. Very excited to be talking here with Kevin Kilroy, who does some great work for TwinSpires and over at Fairgrounds. You see a lot of his stuff on social media, selections, horses to beat, plays of the day. Great work for the folks at TwinSpires. And Kevin, this is a treat for me because as we were talking before, we've interacted a little bit on social media and gone back and forth, but this is the first time you and I get to sit down and have a conversation and really chat races. So thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, man. Gino, thanks for having me on. Yeah, dude, we're both Louisiana focused, So
Yes, yeah.
it was
That's
well, you did awesome work with the Louisiana Downs meet. That was your first one there, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Some good racing out there. Really great turf course, and we see a lot of those horses that were running at Louisiana that will be running at Fairgrounds or have already gotten a race or two under their belt at Fairgrounds. Fairgrounds a little bit higher level overall than Louisiana, but you'll still see a lot of the similar trainers, barns, some of the jockeys over there. So, Kevin, talk to us about some of the work that you do at TwinSpires and over at Fairgrounds. Really seeing you pop up a lot more over the last couple of years, seeing your face get out there more, being a part of more broadcast, and really seeing your selections out there. You've really had a really good couple of years.
Thanks, man. Yeah, well, I just got into the industry. I was
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've always been a writer, so that's been my thing, man. I've been a fiction writer, poet, and all that sort of good stuff, and a teacher. Taught for like 15 years, and oh, man, Joe K. He sent out that tweet. I don't know if you saw it out there, man, but he's like, "I'm looking for a new sidekick." When Brian headed down to Gulfstream, so I applied, and just kind of came out of nowhere, came out of left field to get in the industry.
Awesome.
So it's been amazing, man. Technically, my title is publicity specialist, but it's just a back and forth between doing all the notes writing at Fairgrounds and doing the public handicapping 1 or 2 days a week, popping on air with Joe K. A couple races each day, and everything in between. Trying to get people to pay attention to Fairgrounds. Running the Twitter and all that sort of good stuff. So it's amazing, man. And then I'm writing for TwinSpires Edge. Did some writing for Horse Racing Nation and Yard Barker, spots like that over the summer. And last year I just basically did a lot of freelance horse racing writing in between last meet and this meet. So we'll see what happens for jobs, for work, and all that sort of stuff. I'm always looking for things. So when the meet's over, but right now, man, we're just in the thick of it. We got this big week here, and it's been an interesting meet. We've definitely seen a lot of the Louisiana trainers and jocks and all those sort of friendly faces running with with the turf course not being on. We just had a lot more state bred sort of contests and all that sort of good stuff. So it's paid off to pay attention to those Louisiana Downs, Evangeline Downs, Delta Downs, all that sort of good stuff coming into it.
So Fairgrounds is one of the most fun tracks around this time of year to really pay attention to because you get these great series of races that lead into the Kentucky Derby. And over the last few years, the Fairgrounds, perhaps like the last decade, wow, they've been so strong and they've produced so many good horses to come out and run well in the Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont and the big races. And it is fun to be able to follow along with the progress of a lot of these horses. The horses that we're going to be talking about in some of the races this weekend, a lot of them probably prepped like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think right around the day after Christmas in some of those stakes races. And now they'll be on a schedule between now and like once a month, you get another big round of preps, right? We'll have the Lecomte here, then we'll have the Risen Star, and then that will lead to the Louisiana Derby. So we'll get to follow along with a lot of these horses, even in the undercard stakes races. There's always like a stakes race for that same division on the next big stakes day. So it is really fun when you get to follow these horses in their progress.
It is, man. It's a great series, because we've got the gun runner, right, going 1 mile, 1/16th, and Lecomte is the same distance. Risen Star, we step up a little bit, go a little further, and we've got the 1 mile and 3/16ths for the Louisiana Derby. So it's a nice progression where horses can stretch out a little bit further, try to get that classic distance. And like you said, man, it's still some of these maidens are still popping up. Ever since Justified did it, you can't discount these 3-year-olds that haven't made a start yet. Zozos made his first start last year. It was entered in a race on Lecomte Day, Road to the Derby Day is what we called it, but scratched out of that one and ran the next day and won, here, with a little sprint. Talking to Brad, he says he's still got some runners he hasn't unveiled yet. He said basically that they're running like their asses are on fire, and if they run that well, they should be good. He said it might be a little bit too late, for the Derby, but you never know. And I know, man, talking to the people around Steve Asmussen's barn that they're expecting a big day. They've got some big price horses coming out on the undercard. Some of them are going 6 furlongs, so it makes me think that we might not be able to see them for the Derby. But there's still some runners to come out, so we'll have these big days. And 3 of the last 4 Kentucky Derby winners have come through Fairgrounds. Rich Strike ran in the Gun Runner, right? So didn't do too much, but he definitely ran in the series.
And then, like you said, with the progression now, it's smart. The Louisiana Derby gives horses a little bit of extra distance than they will get at some of the other preps heading into the Derby. And just any little progression that you can get helps get horses more prepared for that. And we're seeing it bear fruit. You know, when it time comes for those big races, these horses are just a little bit more fit come that time. So we have 4 stakes races that we're going to talk about, because the final race on the Saturday card, on a 14 race Saturday card at Fairgrounds, is the Lecomte. So we'll talk about races 11, 12, 13, and 14 as the stakes races. But one very intriguing race on the card was one that you kind of pointed out. Hey, maybe let's take a look at this 9th race too, because there could be a couple horses that come out of this race that could be a Derby prospect, or a horse that shows up in the Risen Star maybe in a month from now, or in some other prep race somewhere else. Let's talk a little bit about this 9th race on Saturday, Kevin. It's a very intriguing one. It's a non-2 optional 80 for 3-year-olds, and it's going 1 mile and a 16th. And the horse that will probably take a lot of support and get a little bit of buzz was a horse who popped with a 90 Beyer speed figure last time out for Brandon Walsh, Banishing, who was really, really impressive, winning at Fairgrounds by 8+ lengths. And he did it going long. He did it after having trouble in his first race at Churchill. So this is definitely a horse with some ability who took a big step forward in the second start.
Yeah, Banishing, I love this horse. Definitely a big horse that's kind of like a puppy dog, you know, in terms of like just not quite being fully within his body, you know, just still trying to get it all together and coordinate it all together. You can see in that first race, like basically did like the splits, you know, in the gate, and then like scrambled to make up for it, and kind of got caught wide there. And, you know, had an easy lead in that last race. This one sort of like pause, you know, and Mobster came in second. So we'll see sort of on the undercard, Mobster's going to run again, how if that flatters, you know, Banishing that Cassie horse Mobster. But, you're talking to Paul Madden, you know, the assistant trainer on the grounds for the Brendan Walsh barn. They're high on this horse. They're thinking, you know, definitely Derby horse. And the reason they chose the allowance instead of the Lecomte was it's Godolphin, and they're just not worried about bringing in the checks, right? They want a runner to just take the time and develop, and be there for the big one. They want to win those big races, or they're not necessarily concerned about it. So it isn't, you shouldn't pause, be like, well, why didn't they go in the Lecomte with this one? Because Banishing's a real legit horse. And, you know, he got the lead in that last one. I don't think he needs it by any means, but there's you know, I'm not sure who else might be able to go with him. Silver Heist is stretching out after going 6 furlongs. So maybe have a little bit of speed on the rail there. And Determinedly's interesting. You know, we've got that Mark Casse runner who Sias had a tough day on the 26th, where all his mounts are like dropped to their knees out of the gates, and
just trouble, on multiple horses. Yep.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if this runner definitely is a turn horse. You know, I think it's going to be a good race to find out, but I'm not sure if this is the one that I would want to put any money on, but still could compromise the pace. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see if Banishing can settle and relax and pass some of these runners coming home.
Now, Tappet Shoes is another Brad Cox runner, and we're going to see so many of these throughout the day. Yeah. And this one, what's interesting about him is that he showed like a completely different dimension than we usually see from like the good horses around this time. Like a lot of the good ones are kind of like Banishing, like they're fast, they show good speed, they kind of run off, or they're sitting close. We don't usually see horses who come from way, way out of it, like Tappet Shoes has, like at this point. But now after a couple starts, we do probably think that he's not really quick out of the gate. Like he does have some issues at the start. He got himself into some traffic, but wow, he was moving in between, and then he angled around, makes this huge move, full of run. He was green as grass in the lane, like zigging and zagging. So you know there's still even more probably upside for this guy, because he wasn't like, that wasn't even his best, but he was just kind of doing it on ability.
Yeah, Gino, you're nailing it. I mean, in terms of this horse, it's a half to Cyberknife, right? Half to Cyberknife, and Cyberknife took a little bit. He was green. He was still figuring
Hmm.
things out in the stretch and just doing anything but passing horses and still getting it together mentally. You know, these Tappets and Cox was saying the other day, just not as much natural speed as some of his other runners, but you know, he definitely could stay the distance. It was a nice run where he learned a lot to be able to come from behind all those horses. Corey's a great rider for that type of horse. Not one that in terms of the two Coxes in here, I definitely like Tappett's Conquest more. But Tappett's Shoes, I think, further down the road, we definitely got to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, and if races like this is a smaller field too, and we were saying like if some of these horses don't get aggressive and push each other on the pace, they might be all content with like their placing in here, sitting like second, third, fourth. But in bigger fields where there's full pace, this might be a fun horse to keep an eye on. I'd love to see him like just run a good second or third in this race and
Yeah,
maybe set him up for, nice preps, big fields, some pace too, because I agree. It's not quite yet for him, but there's something there when you watch him and you
yeah.
know that he's got some ability. It just might have to come together at the right time.
I know, man, but like the more I'm looking at this pace as you're talking about it, it could
Yeah,
set up nicely. I
from the
forgot about that
outside,
Joe
right?
Schwartz, who showed
Invul-
that speed,
and so if you get
invulnerable.
invulnerable, if you get banishing, and if Silver Heist goes from the rail a little bit, now all of a sudden maybe you have three of these horses putting a little bit more pressure. So maybe that pulls him into the race a little bit. Tappet Shoes, who we're talking about in this really fun ninth race, which is basically a prep for a prep. I'm sure we're going to see at least one or two of these horses show up in a prep race soon. And like you said, it's still early enough where nobody has to feel pressured to throw horses into spots right away to get points. Like you can have a horse run and still have another couple opportunities to pick up points along the way. And
Yeah.
yeah, this is a really fun race. I'm glad you mentioned to bring it up. Keep talking. Anything? Who else do you want to point out?
Yeah, Tappett's Conquest is cross-entered the Lecomte, right? And what we're hearing, and I've seen Brad. It seems to me like he just is always thinking through things, and he's always telling you exactly what he's thinking, but he continues to think through it. So we'll see how things go the day of the race. But it sounds like he's going to run in this race and not in the Lecomte. So
And we're recording right now early on Wednesday. Most of you will probably hear this recording on Thursday. So just keep in mind, one thing that we love about Fairgrounds is they get the races out so early, the entries out so early that we've already had a couple days to handicap them, right? And like, it's perfect.
Yeah, that's taken for granted. But all I'm hearing is great things about Tappett's Conquest. All the Cox runners for sure, and I know Flo.
He was so impressive at Churchill Downs.
Yeah,
on October the 1st.
And had an excuse, 7 wide. But he took over in hand 4 wide in the turn and just was in full command late. So I think this runner's, showed us something big time. So we'll see if that's the one. I'm going to go back and forth in between Banishing and Tappett's Conquest in this one. Those are the two that really have my attention.
Yeah, I mean, that race, that Saratoga race that Tampa's Conquest debuted in was a really tough race. He was 16-1 in that race. The winner, Powerful, was a pretty nice horse who came back and, they took a shot in the Breeders' Futurity, but has since won a stakes race at Churchill following that. Another horse in that race named Full Moon Madness, who was third, came back to win really impressively next time out and then was second in the Nashua. So the race has just come back productive, and I think this one has some ability. A very intriguing, salty allowance race here on the Fairgrounds Saturday undercard. Thanks again for making sure that we talked about this one, because this is definitely one to put on everyone's radar. But
yeah, definitely.
Following this, we jump into a really nice string of stakes races, and races 11, 12, 13, and 14 will have an all stakes late pick 4, and we'll get a chance to see kind of like good different groups of horses, which I like, right? We get some turf sprinters, then we'll get a chance to see 3-year-old fillies. We'll get the 3-year-old colts in the Lecomte, and then we get the older in the Louisiana. Yeah. So we get like a good group of everything here, different style horses, different types of horses. And we kick it off with one of the most challenging like style of races to handicap, a 5.5 furlong turf sprint in race number 11 with the Duncan Kenner. So this one is really, really fun to dive into, Kevin, because, I mean, you can make cases for and against many in here. Oh, heck, a horse like Maniwa won this race back in 2021 at 12-1. And that was his lone turf win.
Yes, I know. Blue, his turn of foot, you're just like, are you kidding me? it was amazing. Yeah, it cost me some money that day, but it was a big run by Manny Wah, and the 9 to 5 favorite, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, something like that favorite, and talking to Wayne about him, he says he's just doing fantastic. Like they can't beat him. He's doing so great. But I've heard Wayne say that before about this runner. He often is working really well, and he doesn't always put it together. That
No.
last race, we saw him run, there was really no excuse for that. It was just out the back, and just a dull effort that Manny Wah put together there. But his running,
and that's sometimes why you see the surface change, maybe to hope to kind of wake him up a little bit or switch it up a little bit. But I agree with you, like at a short price, it feels like there are a couple other intriguing horses in here to look at. And for like a turf sprint 5.5 like this, there may be, I think, 2 or 3 horses with speed. It didn't feel like everyone in here was a gun it, need the lead type horse. So I was kind of looking at horses who can sit pretty close or weren't going to be way too far out of it. Who are some of the horses that are on your radar in here?
Yeah, I like that thinking. That gets me to Bulldor. That's one of the thoughts I like about that runner in terms of who's drawn in. They run at Colonial Downs, man. That was a big run. I paid really close attention to that meet. I was following that one and writing about it. And I thought, I bet him pretty hard in that next race at Keeneland, and it didn't work out for me. But it was a big effort, and I thought that was a decent field. And I thought maybe this horse was stepping up. It's just a hard one to trust for sure. It's weird how we're popping, back and forth between the dirt and the turf, and you can see the speed figures just sort of going up and down like crazy. But you've seen him, throw in some duds and then pop back up. So could be interesting. I love
he's the price type of horse, right? Where if the price is right, he's always a horse I think you throw in your pick 4 or pick 5 because you don't want to necessarily have to trust him at a short price, but he's certainly capable of popping up and winning this race. So to me, he's like a pick 4 use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that way of thinking about it. I mean, I think it's one of the hard things about being a public handicap where you're putting your top pick there and your second, third. But I think more in terms of contenders, right? Ones that I want to use.
Me too. Use or kind of lose, right? Like that's
absolutely.
And
Manny Wah's the one I'm just sort of like wondering about, But the horses I like the best are the ones who didn't, are AE. Surveillance is just he's just
sharp form right now. Just an excellent form.
Yeah, I was talking to the groom. He's just so happy. He's just so happy here. He just keeps on, training forward. And there's no reason to think that he can't beat these. And also at a price. They let him go at 7-1 last time after he won the Thanksgiving Classic. It was ridiculous. I mean, almost 8-1, right? And he's won. He broke his maiden on the turf. He loves it down here. He's doing fantastic. So if this guy runs in, for me, I think it might be a single because I'm looking at some
if he's in, I like him a lot because what's nice about him, he comes from off the pace, but he has that positional speed to like put him just a few lengths off and keep him in striking range. And then he has a turn of foot. So like he has multiple moves that he can make. He's like super handy because he's absolutely a horse. If he's in, I'm no doubt using. I guess one to mention that I was warming up a little bit to, and could offer some value, maybe Sign of War, who could be the one to catch if you toss the slop race. He lost to a sharp horse named Emerald Forest, who came back to win next time out. And, the races on the grass are pretty good. That Remington race behind My Pal Matty was his first start in a few months. He could have needed the race a little bit there. He's sort of intriguing to me. Sign of War as maybe another one of these pick 4 horses that I could throw in. He has some pretty good races that could compete with this group with his best.
Yeah, it's hard for me to take Louisiana breds in this race. We got Sign of War. We've also got what's this other runner in here from
Yankee 7.
Yankee 7, My Pal Matty, right? Even though Lee Thomas sent out that great runner Charlie T, who finished second in the Menard last week, and he ran well. So not knocking Louisiana breds, but does make
it's a different level. No, it's definitely a different level. Is the horse?
The speed figures are there. I mean, 96 buyer last time at Remington for My Pal Matty. That's interesting, man. I mean, Bango. Here's one big thing: is we might get a bunch of rain on Saturday. It's been forecasted for a while, so if we're washed off, Bango is a horse that you just want to use. But still, I think surveillance will be in there too. If we wash off, so I still want surveillance over Bango.
Do you give a horse for Al Stall Jr. a shot? Evan Singh, lightly raced horse with some upside in here. A horse who's actually cutting back, has come from off the pace a little more. But honestly, if you dive into those turf sprints, they're not that bad overall. This horse hasn't done a whole lot wrong in his
No.
career. He might just need a little luck with the way the race breaks, but feels like there's a little upside for this guy. First start at 4.
Yeah, Househall's got two big closers in here. I mean, Evan Singh's gonna have to come from way back, and that's been working out on our turf course, and then also Pyron too, a runner who's looked good and ran really well against Just Might. And I was talking to Declan today, and he said, they just turned him out for a while, and he's come back running really strong, and he's run on the dirt before too, so he might, I would think he would stay in if we're off. So Pyron could be interesting. I mean, so the turf course has been a little bit funky in terms of just figuring it out. And it seems like all the best runs have really been coming towards the outside.
Late and down the middle, right? Yeah.
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 You just kind of see, it just gets a little bit chewed up where it's getting run on. We saw one runner, an Amos runner, I think it was My Friend Charlie, had a huge run up the rail. That was surprising. So I think you should move that effort forward if you are looking back at that race, because that was not the place to be. But if it sets up for a closer, it could be Pyron or Evan Singh could be coming late. Maybe these turf sprints, like you said, they're so hard to handicap.
So wide open, and they put it in the front of the pick 4 on purpose just to make it challenging for all of us. Yes. So keep in mind, as we are a few days out, if there are any type of surface changes or track conditions, if you're following Kevin on social media, you'll be able to get like any up-to-date information, and he'll pass along, selections if it does change. Because if they're off the turf too, this would be the race that obviously would impact the most of the ones we're talking about. This one would change, and horses like Surveillance and Bango would draw in, and you'd really want to use them on your tickets. But a fun way to start this late pick 4 with a challenging turf sprint. And then we head to a filly prep race in the 12th race. I think I have the morning line here that I can pull up and hang out with us and show along. So so we've got the morning line here for the Silver Bullet Day, which is going to go as race number 12. Kevin, they'll go 1.70 in this one. And we have Chop Chop, who is actually your favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, coming off a really good runner-up effort in the Alcibiades. She finished second in the Alcibiades. She came back and she just had a really tough trip in the Breeders' Cup. I think it's one of those races that you just probably put a line right through. Like, she just never had a shot there, right? So we're kind of playing her off of her Alcibiades. We're playing her, also to keep in mind, though, that this is her starting point of the year, right? This is not the big prize. She wants to be ready and peaking for the Kentucky Oaks, and someone like Brad Cox can absolutely have him ready to fire at any point, but he knows very well that if he wants to have him peaking come May, you don't necessarily need to be 100% ready and cranked right now. And she's also, in the race at Keeneland, at least on the dirt, her dirt form, she hasn't shown a whole lot of speed. So there could be a couple knocks just playing her to win in this spot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, she's an absolute single. Chop Chop, I think, is just
she's the class of the field, no doubt.
She's the class of the field. So they never turned her out. They kept her in the barn. They just kind of slowed up, and she's just been training really forwardly, and just seems like she's just set and ready to go. She's doing fantastic in the mornings, and that run in the Alcibiades was just as impressive as it gets. She was just
so good,
weaving through traffic like a fucking Maserati. She was just
11 to 14, 8 off. She gets stopped. She's got to deal with traffic. She angles out, and she just missed. I mean, it was so good.
And Wonder Wheel. She could be in the Derby. She's
nice.
Very good, right? There's a couple fillies. Who's your filly for Amos, and Wonder Wheel are two that could be really interesting against the boys. But so flattered by losing to that one, and that was one of those trips that if you love Rosario, you're like, wait a minute, why do I love Rosario? What's because I do love Rosario. I think he's one of my favorite riders. But sometimes, they all do. They throw in some head scratchers. But yeah, she's cranked. She's ready to go. And I hear what you're saying in terms of
because it kind of feels like there are two races in this race to me, because if she shows up and runs her race, none of the other 6 fillies really have shown that they're in that class level with her. If she's not ready or she doesn't fire, then it's a race between the rest of the field. But like, if she comes in here with probably a B+ game, it would be pretty tough, I think, for any of these fillies on their A game to really compete with her.
Yes, but she is ready. She's 100% cranked.
Knowing that, Like,
The barn's telling me that she's going to run her race. I mean, if it's good enough, I think that's the only question. And Amber Cascade might not run. I haven't talked to Cherie, but I just hearing her. She was on C. Bick's show, and she was saying that they were going to see how she came out of that work from Monday and decide whether she's going to run. But hearing her talk, they're not running to win. Amber Cascade's, just going to try to get some points, because a one step forward still isn't a fast enough figure or big enough performance to get it done.
No.
So they're being pretty transparent about that.
Like Forrest Chimes, whose race was super impressive, but it's tough when it's on an off track. Sometimes you don't really know if it was the off track that maybe propelled that, especially when it's what it tends to happen on these off tracks is you have like one or two horses in the field that like it, and then the rest of the field that doesn't. And so you get these margins of victory all the time where a horse wins by 7 or 8 lengths, just like we saw with Forrest Chimes. I mean, no knocking that performance. It was very impressive, asked for run, tipped to the outside, and just blew right by, but will need to step forward and then prove that she's in the class with a horse like Chop Chop.
Yeah, I think if you were going to get, trying to get a price, I think Forrest Chimes is the one to look at. She ran huge. That was a big race, and Grapes for Eloise. That's a fine filly right there. The Amos Barnes really high on her, and to beat her by 7 1/4 lengths is an impressive effort. And Barkley does not try to win first out. That's not what he's doing. That's not what his program is all about. So this was all her, in other words, so she's a really big deal. But he was already thinking, that they wanted to head towards the Oaks. And, it's like you're saying, man, like when you're trying to get to the Oaks, are you trying to get there with your, your best run that you haven't quite exerted yourself fully, sort of like the Asmussen style, trying to like just slowly take small steps forward? Or are you trying just to get there? And so therefore, this is a great race to try to get it done. Now, it came up tough with Chop Chop and others in here, but Forrest Chimes probably is going to be trying to get the points now as opposed to, later if it's a little bit tougher in the Alexandra with Who's Your Filly and all that sort of stuff, which is something to keep in mind. That Who's Your Filly, she's a monster. So nobody wants to run against her in the Rachel Alexandra, which she's going to run against next. So possibly this is why Chop Chop is cranked and ready to go now, because they want to get those points now. And same with the Alyssa Look, but I'm not sure if she's good enough to beat Chop Chop.
Yeah, because now it's nice if you get her to get some big points right here, then you can put yourself in a situation where you can take off the next race and then prep right before, or you can take the next race and then take some time off and go fresh into it just gives you options.
Yeah,
it gives you so many options. And she's definitely the class of the field. If I was going to try to get creative at all in here, I wasn't impressed with I really wasn't impressed with the last race from the 3 all that much. Hey, you never know. But I could see this horse maybe getting out front and not having to face a ton of other pressure early and hanging around maybe a little bit longer than they did last time out, because I don't see all that much early speed in here. Maybe Nora G gets sent from the inside a little bit, just kind of stretching out. But I think everyone will be kind of content sitting back a little bit. And if they get aggressive with Heyu and Heyu Evano, that would be the one that I think I wouldn't be shocked if this horse is like 12-1 and turns for home and has a length lead, and Chop Chop's got to come and get this one. So that would be my that would be my price.
She's a good filly too. She's a neat story. If she does make the Oaks, you'll hear all about her, because she was actually a gift to the owners to Stuart Dymack.
Awesome.
He was showing me videos, all this stuff. So what's the deal is they're about to sell her at the Ocala sale, and the farrier, they just clipped her hoofs a little bit too close, and they took a little bit too much off. So she, they knew they shouldn't work her, do a little 2 furlong blowout deal, but they did. It was a horrible time, and she was basically unsellable. So the breeder called up, Stuart, and he's like, Stu, man, I got a filly who's looking for a job. And Stu's like, are you kidding me? Send videos. Been a monster since she was an early 2-year-old. She's a big, really sort of sassy. I was hanging out with her in the barn the other day, man. She's just looking at me like, who the hell are you? What are you? And she's like, went back to eating. She's just done with it. Nipped at me a little bit and then went back to eating. So I think she's got more to show. I think that was tough, chasing Pretty Mischievous last time. And, she's another big filly, man, that the Walsh Barn's really high on. So keep an eye on her. And they're just waiting for her and the Rachel Alexandra. But yeah, I think Hey You Never Know is an interesting one. Definitely one you want to use underneath if you
And
like chop chop as much as I do.
man, those are the types of stories that I just love because
Oh, yeah.
we can all handicap the race and stuff, but like, you get little tidbits when I'm talking with someone like you about those horses. And man, that's great. Like I love hearing those kinds of things and just that you're visiting with these horses and seeing their demeanor a little bit and hearing the stories
Yeah.
of how they came to, because now a little more rooting interest for some of them, it's
Yeah,
cool to hear
totally,
those
man.
stories.
Yeah, the owners they're kick-ass dudes. They're at the tracks every day hanging out. They're just
Awesome.
dogs. They're just so they're
Okay,
feeling the
well,
fortune and really feeling blessed. So
okay, well, let's see if they can catch a flyer out front there and get some points here and maybe progress on their way to another Philly prep race. Let's progress ourselves to race number 13 on Saturday. I think I've got the odds here for the Louisiana, Kevin, and this is fun because we have our 3-year-old Philly prep race and then our 3-year-old Colt prep race that are separated by a fun race with some really good older horses. Like, this is a contentious group of runners who they're all kind of intriguing and like pointing in the right way. I mean, you look at Run Classic, Happy American, Forza Dioro, Zozos, Mr. Wireless, like just those 5. I'm not saying those are the only horses that can win, but they're all like really interesting horses that are in good form that could be set up for like very nice years ahead.
yeah, I think those are the ones that do make the most sense. It's kind of hard to look at a couple of the prices in here, but yeah, I mean, last year it was Mandaloon versus Midnight Bourbon. That was the Louisiana. It just feels like a different race. These are all like really hard, honest, interesting, older, 2-turn horses. And they just had the superstar power with those 2 runners last year. But man, this is an interesting one. We've got the trifecta from the prep race, the Tenacious, and Happy American.
Six horses from the Tenacious are back in this race.
Yeah, Happy American just Calhoun was like, I don't know how he lost, and Pessin just keeps on talking about how Happy Americans just keeps on moving forward, getting bigger, it keeps on improving, just keeps on kicking down the stalls and is ready to run. And usually he was the type of runner that would just sort of like, nail somebody at the wire and be like a nose or a neck or that type of thing, or get lost in traffic. But he pulled away by 2 3/4 lengths against Mr. Wireless. That was impressive, man. So that's one. If I wanted to get bold, I'd be like, all right, I think we might get some price with Happy American. People might sleep on Pessin, but Zozos, dude.
Yeah, we talked about him a minute ago. He is like just got so much ability. He debuted in January of 2022. He won his first race at Fairgrounds very nicely. Then he went over to Oaklawn. He won by 10. He comes back and he's your runner-up in the Louisiana Derby. And then the Derby, in his 4th career start, it's easy to just toss that race. And then he shows back up.
I mean, we know the pace in the Derby. It was
how
so
fast
hot.
it was, and he was in the pace. He was involved in the race.
19, yeah, man, that was still a big effort. And I think he finished ahead of anybody else who was tending to the pace. So that was still a big effort, man.
And then he comes back in his first start off of 6 months, and he actually comes from like way farther back than he had before. He shows a different dimension, some versatility, just an impressive effort. And he can sit a little closer. They have options. Like, watching him visually last year too, he felt like the type of horse that, gosh, in a year where he kind of grows into his body a little bit more, like this is going to be a fun horse as he gets older. And I'm very intrigued by him this year. I mean, he could have a fantastic year.
He could have a fantastic year, man. He could absolutely be, in the Classic, come November. And I think initially they were real patient. They were just like, we're just going to wait, probably run him through his conditions and not be aggressive with the stakes. And then he's been training so forwardly, man, that they're just like, shit, we gotta run him in this. We got to take the money because we just got to move him forward, man. He's doing great. So it's hard when you're looking at these horses and Zozos is going to be, even money,
Yeah, he's going to get bet. He's definitely going to get bet hard in here.
Yes.
So maybe like a Happy American could give you some really nice value in here. I mean, and then how about the Run Classic?
What do you think about him? What do you think?
Because Run Classic has a couple victories over Happy American, who then beat a lot of this same group in the Tenacious. And it does feel like in watching his races, this should probably be about the perfect trip for him. Like, I don't think he wants to go farther than this. And I think that was sort of what happened at Oaklawn Park. He was sitting behind Ball Harbor and he loomed up like he was going to go right by. And then he just didn't have much punch. And Ball Harbor kicked on. And if I'm just looking at his races, I think he's just about a miler. And
yeah,
he could get a pretty good trip in here too. Like, he might be close to the front end. I think with the inside draw, like, I wouldn't be shocked if they wanted to get aggressive with him and had him right on the lead in here. So yeah, he's very interesting to me because I do like the cutback. I think from a class standpoint, he fits very well with the Happy American running lines. And if he's forwardly placed in here, it's probably him, Forza Dioro, and then whatever they decide to do with Zozos, that'll probably be like towards the top flight. Maybe because he's drawn outside, Zozos will maybe be sitting like third or fourth, kind of close up. But there's not all that much. There's really nobody who's a for sure need the lead type horse, right? There's a couple horses that could get the lead, but nobody who's we're convinced is going to be on the front end.
No, not at all. And I think Gentle Soul will probably not run in this one. That's not the spot they really want to be in. That he's cross-entered in earlier in the Colonel Bradley, and he had the lead last time, but they didn't want him to have the lead. And Brian Hernandez Jr. is one of my favorite riders with the lead. He's like Rosario when they were like these master riders when they had the lead and they can really just
the clock is so good. Like, or they have the race, the timing so well that like when they're on the front end, just forget about it because they're gonna play cat and mouse with you so well.
Yeah, and the question everybody's always like, Brett, like, what's the deal? 2 turns with our classic? I mean, that was a huge 7 furlong effort. Are you sure? And today, man, he told me, he's like, all right, if you put a gun to my head, I'd probably say, 7 furlongs or a 1-turn mile is his absolute like preferred perfect distance, but he absolutely can get 2 turns. Like he's a 2-turn horse. He can do this for sure. So it'll be interesting to see, man. He's a big old monster. He's just a colossal dude. And
and so he's one of those types that like, you want him to be close up and just doing his own thing, right? Like you don't want to have to try to start and stop him or have him come from way, way out of it. I think you just want to kind of get him close up, even if he's sitting to the outside of a horse or two and just sort of let him freewheel it. He's one of those big horses that will dig in. I think if you got to try to start and stop with him, it might not work as well. So I'd like to see them just sort of let him run early in here.
Yeah, and you can actually just cross out that Tencel, that Oaklawn Park race. He just had no confidence on the track. He didn't enjoy it at all, and he kind of slipped a little bit when you were talking about that. Where he couldn't make his move. And Brett's like he just hated that track. He
eliminate that race and eliminate the Louisiana Derby from a couple years ago when that race sent him to the bench for a year and a half. And you take those 2 races out of his career, and you're left with five exacta finishes.
Dude, you're kind of talking me into him because that race on November 13th, he got sent so hard. It wasn't like a typical Brian race where he like overly aggressively sent. He doesn't usually do that. He did. It was a contested pace. It was really hard. It was an all-out duel, and that's a hard one to hold on to. And Farmington Road just comes cruising at the end and finally gets that win. Everybody thought he could be a big horse back in the day, and he finally gets that win with Cherie DeVoe. And that wasn't a perfect setup either. So if he can kind of get back to what we saw there, that 7 furlong distance, and run, a better setup, a better trip, and really put all of his talents on display, then I mean, you're getting me excited. Run classic Zozos, Happy American. We have 3 Breeders' Cup Classic horses in here, man.
Such a good group here. This is a good group. I mean, and just even worth mentioning, like a horse like Forza Dioro, who got back on track in his last start. Yeah. This is a horse who was only, he was favored in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. This is a horse who.
I mean, a Brad Cox horse going to be 8-1 or something like that. I mean, I think he's going to be much higher than 9-2.
I think so too, because I agree with you. I think the money's going to come on Zozos. I think you'll get some support for probably Run Classic and Happy American a little bit, and he will float up. Even Mr. Wireless, and maybe he's a horse second start, back off the little bit of a break, and you could make him an excuse, not really an excuse, but just say he ran like a horse who probably needed the race last time out, and we'll have a little more bottom. So what a cool race with older horses right in the middle of his pick 4 here in the Grade 3 Louisiana on Saturday, race 13 at Fairgrounds. Then we turn the page to the 14th. It's the main event for Saturday. It's the Lecomte, the Grade 3 Lecomte. And we have, again, a contentious group. You see the morning line odds that we're looking at right now. There are 8 horses in the race. None of them are above 10-1.
Yeah.
And you can legitimately make like a fun case for most of the horses in here. We will start with the horse who's a grade 2 winner, who won the Kentucky Jockey Club at Churchill Downs, and that is Instant Coffee. He is 5-2 on the morning line. He's a slight favorite in this one, Kevin. What are some of your thoughts of the Lecompte and of Instant Coffee?
You know, this one's still, it's tough for me to figure this one out. I mean, some people, I'm hearing some people say, like, just don't take anybody out of that Kentucky Jockey Club. That just, it wasn't that strong and all these sort of things. But I mean, Instant Coffee, the race flow was in his favor, but he went wide and he kind of had a trip that you shouldn't win with, you know? And so that impresses me for sure. I've heard, high talk about Instant Coffee, like, oh, maybe the best in the barn. And then I've heard sort of like that not be present in some of the talk from people around these horses. And, I think the price is going to be short, so it makes me want to look elsewhere, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
One news is that Itzos won't run. That's a
Okay.
half trip. Alexander is going to run at Turfway in the, the Leonidas or something like that this weekend. So Itzos won't be there. Two fills, man. I mean, especially if it's rainy. Larry's like, I hope it rains, basically.
Yeah.
That was
grade 3 winner.
Yes. Yeah. That the street sense through the slop. But Overhaze Strike, which I don't think is a real, is not a real Derby horse, isn't a real sort of contender. So that's not very flattering, but had a tough trip, a really, really bothered trip there in the Breeders' Futurity, and just moved up, I think, because of that. I think because of that, sometimes horses, when they face adversity, they just say, shit, I don't want to ever run again. But other ones who face adversity and they learn something from it and really step forward, that's a big thing to sort of pay attention to. And he was already showing a lot, and he did. Winning that street sense was big. So Ravelli's never had a Derby horse, man. He's a big time winning trainer, a Chicago guy where I got into the sport, and he's never had one. So it would be amazing. But Two Fills and Confidence Game are the two that I'm going to try to circle in on and see where the value's at. In this
so we know for sure, or we know that Itzos is out, and we think Tappett's Conquest is pointing to the other race.
Yep. That
should.
Yeah, and so it's here. That's just hearing from the connections of Itzos. You never know sort of like how these things go. But yeah, that $1.4 million purchase likely will be in that Turfway Park Leonidas on Saturday, and then Tappett's Conquest likely in the other one. And this is all just the sort of gossip that I gather, man. So it's nothing official. I apologize if anything's wrong, but that's
we're a few days out. We're passing along that information too. And then you have a horse like Echo Again, who had that. There's always a horse or two like Echo Again every year who have the monster first out race, earn a big figure, and then you never know if they're going to get back to that performance again. Echo Again came back, and what I will say, in the Iroquois, on paper, it was a race that looked like there were a couple speeds that might hurt each other, like some of the major contenders there. So he got burned up, comes back in the Springboard Mile, runs better in the Springboard Mile that day. He's no doubt an inside pace factor, but you wonder with a horse like this sometimes when they run so fast in that first start, and sometimes they can never quite get back to it. But you're going to have a Steve Asmussen horse with some speed from the inside who probably won't be one of the top couple choices in here.
I know it, man. I don't think so either. I know. I think at first glance, you're like, oh, Echo Again's in this. That horse is going to get bet. But I mean, I think everybody can see pretty clearly that he just might be a sprinter. Now he's still developing. He's a gun runner, but he's a foal to Coast. What was that horse? Costa. Give me one quick second here.
Up right now.
About my formulator stuff. Costa Terra, a foal to Costa Terra, who was on the Derby Trail last year, won sprinting and could never win going 2 turns, right? But a half to Pneumatic, who did great, going 2 turns, won the Pegasus and ran in the Belmont and the Preakness in that weird COVID year, and so there's some question marks about distance there. If it's a full out send, I think it might be a little bit too much. But I like the fact that we have TGAF on there instead of Santana or Rosario, in terms of just maybe a rider who's going to just find something different and maybe find a different trip than Santana could. Santana's definitely a great front front running jockey. So maybe TGAF's gonna get this one to settle a little bit. Sometimes they can just do a little something different for the different jocks. So that could be interesting. If he does settle, he could be a freaking monster. But I'm not sure if he's gonna settle.
You mentioned those DRF formulator PPs. I had to play producer for a second and pull them up right here for you. So we got this looking at the pedigree of Echo again. Echo again's Dam Teardrop here, and then the direct siblings who Kevin was just mentioning, Pneumatic and Costa Terra. So there's a really nice pedigree, and this horse, is a nice horse and was bred to be a very nice one. It'll just be interesting to see if overall this horse wants to go this long, or maybe they end up cutting him back and he ends up being a sprinter or maybe more of a one-turn type horse. Echo again here as we look at the PPs. And I mean, we're talking pretty much about most of this field. What do we think about a horse like Dennington? We talked about his race in the Kentucky Jockey Club that many people may think it wasn't that strong. He wasn't too far behind Instant Coffee there. And then last time out, he ran in the Smarty Jones. He was like 3 deep and he was chasing Lone Speed. Victory Formation is a pretty highly regarded runner. He feels like, I don't know if like the small field here will do it for him, but he's a horse who I'm going to kind of keep on my radar. Like I'd love to see him run well, like a second or third in this race and just keep progressing. Cause I think there could be a good spot for him someday with his name on it. If things all came together, they add the blinks. And I think that should really help him. He seems like a horse who's kind of been his own worst enemy at times too, kind of running into trouble and maybe being a little bit green. What do you think about Dennington's chances here?
Yeah, he's one that I just want to toss just pretty quickly, just in terms of not getting. Cause sometimes you can just start talking yourself into these horses that they could do something. And I mean, he did start slow last time, which at this point you kind of want them to be breaking well. But he did lose. I've got 3 links that he lost right off the bat in the Smarty Jones. So that's something. Yeah, I agree. Victory Formation is a strong contender on the
trail.
Yeah. And dude, Corey's been just killing it, man. He's been figuring it out.
Awesome start to the meet.
Yeah. So he could figure something out, but he's one I would want to toss. Maybe you can get excited about Bromley. I mean, the fact that they're deciding to send that one down instead of Itzos, this mastery colt stretched out for the first time. It could be, just what he's been wanting to do. And he's, sometimes when you see these runners, when they go 2 turns for the first time, they really take a big step forward. So if we can step up from those numbers, this runner makes sense for sure. And
and then you talked confidence game. You like Right Next Door. That was a good win at Churchill on November the 26th. And while both of his wins have been on the lead, I actually don't think he needs the lead. Like, I think he can probably be forwardly placed and close and pass some horses. He was in a really tough race against Damon's Mound in his career debut that I believe this race came back so strong. We had Damon's Mound, Mayfield Strong, Frosted Departure, who all came back to win. And Damon's Mound was very, very good in his first couple starts. And then he was in that Iroquois race that had some speed in it early on, and he's actually, I think, going to be making his return to the races sometime pretty soon. But that form early on was very good, and I'm glad that you have him on your radar, because to me, he's like a must use if you're playing pick 4s and stuff, and I think he's going to run really well in here.
Yeah, absolutely. So his Dam, I can't pronounce
Louison.
Yeah, but half to Zenyatta.
And she was the one who was really good, but what ended up happening with her, Kevin, because I remember being in Southern California, because I was at the racetracks all the time when she was training and seeing her in the mornings, and I think they just babied her because she was the Zenyatta, she was worth so much that anytime there was like a small issue going into the race, she would get scratched, she wouldn't run, and then she sort of like lost, I think, a little bit of her fight. Like, I think she lost a little bit of that oomph because they were really, really treating her with kid gloves. And after these first couple, I think she just sort of lost the will to compete, but she's got ability and she showed precocity too.
Yeah, absolutely. That you can see, you see that with all the layoffs there, right? They definitely, what you're saying makes a ton of sense. That's interesting, because I do remember her being out there and then going to Saratoga for that third start after facing those younger ones. So there's interesting pedigree there. And somehow DeSormo, Don't Tell My Wife Stables, had picked this one up for $25,000 in September, man. He's an absolute runner. James Graham's been riding fucking lights out, and I think Confidence Game is one that you want to pay attention to. Been working fantastic, and he's interested in here, man. I do think Instant Coffee will take a lot of money, and I think you kind of want to look elsewhere right now, but we'll see, man. It's hard to distrust the Cox Barn right now. They had such a huge day with Corona Bolt and Dazzling Blue and JC's Road winning 3 of the 4 2-year-old stakes on Road to the Derby kickoff day, and yeah, so they've got runners, man. They've got runners for sure, but I'd like to find a price in here.
Kevin, man, this has been a blast. I didn't even ask you or tell you how much time we were going to take, but I took almost an hour of your time. We've had so much fun talking. It's been such a blast. So I'd love to, if possible, get you back in a few weeks for the next round, the next big prep day when it's Risen Star Day and Rachel Alexander, and we can see how some of these horses have progressed and see what happened here, because this was a blast, man. I love how much you know about a lot of these connections, and you're following these horses day in, day out. And not only do we get great handicapping insights, but also great information about some of the connections and the owners and the trainers. And couldn't have asked for a better performance from you, my friend. Great stuff here.
Yeah, Gino, man, it's been great talking to you, man. I'd love to come back for sure. And when you're trying to find an edge as a horse player, like shit, you can stare at these pages all day long. But I mean, being on the backside, it's like, all right, man, I've got to talk to people and hear this stuff. So I love hearing the stories for everybody. It's the best part of the job, and happy to share them. So thanks for having me on. We're going
to give you a follow on Twitter at Trust Your Luck. We're going to
trust your luck.
Trust it. We're going to find you doing some fantastic work with Twin Spires and with Fairgrounds. And man, buddy, it was a blast. I think this is going to be the first of many conversations that we have talking races in the coming years. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to
coming to Louisiana, man. When you coming down to Fairgrounds?
You know what? I've never been to Fairgrounds. I've never been to Louisiana. I did go to Delta a few times with the Jackpot when I was covering it back from TVG. And I have to say, that was my all-time favorite trip. The people in Louisiana are so amazing, genuine, incredible. Like, it was a blast. And so I will have to do it. I'll have to hitch a ride over. I know my buddy Scott Schaap went down there and did a lot of work over the last couple of years too. And I love Joey. I play in a fantasy baseball league. He got me involved in one last year. So you guys got a great,
Schaap just showed up today. So he's in town now. And
awesome.
I got to talk to him about you. That's great. Yeah, man, come out and see us, man. We'd love to have you down at Fairgrounds.
Absolutely. It's a bucket list, and we'll come soon. We'll come out there soon. Kevin, buddy, thank you so much. We'll be following along with your work all this weekend and all the time, man. You do such great stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Gino.
Folks, don't go anywhere. If you're listening on the podcast, we have a lot more to come for this weekend. If you're following along on social media, thanks so much. And make sure to give Kevin a follow on Twitter at Trust Your Luck.